Here on the ground, change happens fast. Problems feel frequent and urgent. It's loud and anxiety runs high. From a satellite view, the Earth looks the same as it did thousands of years ago. We've been here before. Let's learn from our past and shoot for a better future.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of A Satellite View. I'm Todd Mikkelson, your host, speaking at you from Sunday, January 25th, 2026, in the space and time continuum. I'm feeling a lot better this week than I was last week. Now, it's not because we here in Minnesota are getting used to having our innocent American citizens assassinated execution style by Trump's Gestapo goons. It's because we are being emboldened and we're getting stronger every day. All of us. The nearest town to where I'm speaking at you from is about a mile and a half from here. It's called Navarre, and it's very small. It's about a block long, and it's got 2 gas stations, a hardware store, a grocery store. Very, very small. It's, like I said, about 20 miles west of Minneapolis, a little more than that. And I went to the grocery store there today, and there were about 60 or so people with signs. I was honking my horn at them, giving them the thumbs up. On the intersection, at the intersection in little, small Navarre, Minnesota. This is how it's going in Minnesota here, and it is not warm. Today is warmer, but I think when I went into town, it was 4 degrees Fahrenheit. On Friday, it was called Strike Day, I think. A lot of stores were closed, letting their employees go out and march against ICE. And it was 16 below zero Fahrenheit air temperature. With wind chill, it felt like it was negative 31 degrees Fahrenheit. And still, the first numbers they put out were about 50,000 people just in Minneapolis and St. Paul. There were people all over the place, but just in Minneapolis and St. Paul, about 50,000 people. And you know that number is going to be reported in about a week to be even higher by quite a bit. That's how that always works. This administration is emboldening the American citizenry in a way that has not happened, I don't think, in our country's history. And it's not their plan. They also seem to forget that everybody has a camera. Every one of their murders and executions and assassinations that they do on American Minnesotan citizens is going to have at least 3 video angles. They immediately come out and they try and tell a story about what happened. And then a few minutes after that, videos start to come out and prove that they are lying to all of us. I know that's maddening, and I know that's something you already know. I do want to report, since I am on the ground here in Minnesota, again, about 20 or so miles west of Minneapolis. In downtown Minneapolis, there are these small business printers. So this is very Minnesota, if you can see this. And if you're listening, I'll say it says, "You betcha." That's a big Minnesota thing. I avoid it myself because, it's like oofta. My parents always used to say, oofta. Oofta is called. You betcha. So you betcha, we melt ice every day. Minnesota. This was given out, letterpress printed at Lunalux, St. Paul, Minnesota, January 13th, 2026. This is 2 colors, and it looks like screen printing, and they just printed it out, and they're giving these away to people. You can see a couple other ice out signs behind me here today. And these are being given out for free by small printing companies in the Twin Cities. and people are fired up. And the feeling of community and togetherness is incredible. When this is a red zone that, you know, I told you before, I ran for office in 2012, and although I brought the Democratic numbers up by 9 percentage points, I still lost. I got 38% of the vote. That's 9 points more than a Democrat usually gets in this district. 29% was the base at that time. Now, we have brought it up since that time. I started to bring it up, and we have been working hard here to bring it up. But still, it's traditionally a Republican district. And to see 60 people in the intersection of Navarre with similar signs to what I'm showing you here. There was one said, "Don't tread on Minnesota." That's very interesting. I'm going to point that out in a moment here. But that's usually a saying of the right wing for the last few years. Don't tread on me. Now, what's happened in this shooting that's changing things a lot, partially is that the guy who should still be with us, Alex Pretti, I believe is how you pronounce his name. It's Pretti. He was a registered gun owner, and he had a gun on him. He did not ever brandish the weapon. It was in a holster around the back, at the small of his back. He never reached for it. An ICE agent took it out of Alex Pretti's holster before the shooting. He was unarmed when he was shot. And he was shot, it looks like once that killed him, and then his body was on the ground, and he looked very dead. And the guy who was shooting him could not stop shooting him and kept shooting him into his dead body. I've heard anywhere from 5 to people have counted 10 shots. You know, and another thing is then the Minnesota BCA, the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, was prevented from going on the scene by ICE, even though the BCA brought a judge-approved warrant, which, by the way, they normally don't even need. And the federal agents did not allow the BCA to come near it. Now, that is against the law, and Mary Moriarty, who is the main, I can't remember her title anymore, but she filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration because of that. And she still is going to run an investigation on this shooting. And also, multiple judges have ordered the Trump administration to not destroy any evidence. Now, the Trump administration is ignoring all laws. They're against the United States at this point. Now, because Alex Pretti was a registered gun owner and had a gun on him, the Gun Owners Caucus, the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus, has a press release. We're deeply concerned by this morning's reports that a federal law enforcement operation in Minneapolis resulted in the fatal shooting of a 37-year-old Alex Pretti by federal agents. According to local officials, the man was legally armed. A firearm was recovered at the scene, and he is believed to have been a lawful gun owner and permit to carry holder. Many critical facts remain unknown. We do not yet have an independent account of what initiated the encounter or what triggered the use of deadly force. Despite widespread speculation regarding intent, there has been no evidence produced indicating an intent to harm the officers. We are calling for a full, transparent investigation by both state and federal authorities. That's by the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus, who normally they want all of the worst things in guns. They want legalized silencers. You don't use a silencer when you're hunting for deer. They want that fast trigger motion thing. They want that. They still want people dead. The Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus has always wanted Americans to die by gun violence. They love it. But now they're coming out against the Trump administration because Alex Preddy was a gun owner. Who would have thought that Democrats are also gun owners? I don't know if Alex Preddy was a Democrat. Some of the information about his personal life seems like maybe he was, but it doesn't matter. And the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus doesn't think it matters anymore. They always have. They always have. But they don't seem to care anymore. Also, the NRA is talking about this, taking sides against the federal agents that executed, murdered, execution style Alex Preddy, an unarmed at the moment. I think they thought he had a gun on him, but when he was shot, he actually did not, because a different agent had taken his gun away from the scene before the shooting. Anyway, I'm not going to keep talking about things that you probably have already heard. I will say there's some things that maybe you haven't heard. The Minneapolis police chief, Brian O'Hara, it's kind of funny, it almost sounds like a Batman police chief. Commissioner O'Hara, you know how cops always used to be Irish. So our current Minneapolis police chief is actually named O'Hara. He seems to be very well put together. He seems to be doing his job very well, as opposed to, you know, Stephen Miller and Kristi Noem and all the idiots who are working for Trump, including Trump himself, of course. He said last year, 900 guns were apprehended by the Minneapolis police, and there were no shootings. The police didn't kill anybody. They made a lot of arrests, and they even apprehended illegal guns, 900, with no incidents. Whereas ICE and Border Patrol have already murdered 2 Minnesotans in the last, 2.5 weeks? And even Fox News is going against the narrative. This morning, even on Fox News, they're grilling the Trump administration officials that they're putting on TV. And I think it's surprising, the administration people, because they have no answers and they look surprised on these clips from just this morning. And still, Friday was a planned demonstration day, but Saturday and today, people are still demonstrating, certainly here in Minnesota. The power of the people is palpable here in Minnesota, I'm telling you. Now, there are other things, believe it or not, to talk about. More than 2/3 of my notes had nothing to do with the murder execution style of Alex Preddy by Trump. By the way, where is Donald Trump? We haven't seen him since Thursday, maybe? He's not supposed to be flying internationally, and he made 2 international flights this week. And you saw his hand, and then the story is he bumped it on a desk. Have you ever bumped your hand on a desk? He looks like he got shot in his hand or something. And they're saying, oh, he bumped it on a desk. Okay, yeah, right. He's going to die at any moment, and we all know it. Some of us aren't afraid to point it out. People who talk about, you know, how's Trump going to react to the midterm elections? We're not going to be sure. The only people who will know are mediums who confer with the dead. That's the only way you're going to know how Trump is reacting to the midterm elections, because he's going to be on the other side. He's not going to be on this side. He's not going to be in the third dimension here with us, or whatever dimension we're passing into here. But before we take a break, I want to point out something about Democrats. Or actually, let's take a break first. And we're going to come back and I'm going to talk a little bit about Democrats. I know I'm getting sick and tired of people like Hakeem Jeffries saying, now, January 6th was a shame when it happened. It's a shame now, and it will be a shame in the future. I'm sick of it. I'm getting sick of the Democrats just being performative, sort of. It's kind of like, you need to shut up and go do something. I don't care what you do, but please have it be something. So we're all getting sick of, well, okay, we're going to talk about it when, like I said, when we come back from a break. I will start the second half by telling you a joke that I came up with. I think it was on Christmas Eve. It just popped in my head and I said it. And people seem to think it's funny. Because last week, I was told was the darkest show I had ever done. And I was reminded that you try and keep humor going. Because last week, I don't think I kept any humor going. I was so pissed off. I could barely do the show. It's kind of wild for me to think back about just how pissed off I was. Because I don't feel that way today. I feel really good today. I feel really good about the people and the power of the people today. We're going to take this back from the horrible darkness that is the Trump administration. But let's talk about what the Democrats can and can't do and what they should do, even if they can't really do it. And we'll talk about that when we come back from a short break. On a Satellite View, find our website, satelliteviewpodcast.com, and find us on YouTube by going to YouTube and search for Satellite View Podcast. And then subscribe. It's free. You can also find me at Todd Mikkelson on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Blue Sky. I think that's everything. So, keeping the humor going. I'll tell you a joke I came up with very abruptly. It like popped into my head. It happened to be Christmas Eve. I just remember. So here it is. You can tell, see, I already blew it. Maybe I'm funny when I'm just talking sometimes, but when I try and tell a joke, I always blow it, even if it's a joke I made up. The joke is something like, because I'm going to blow it again. It's been proven that Donald Trump is a reptilian because he grew a new ear. Okay, that pertains to the fake assassination farce from last summer. Anyway, there's my joke for people who think that I need to keep humor in the show and that I failed to do so last week. So we're going to talk about the Democrats. You're hearing that Chuck Schumer is actually being touted as saying something worth the air of the breath that it took to say, because he's been completely feckless for a long time now. And he's saying that, he's going to do everything he can to make sure that funding for DHS, which would also be ICE, is not funded in the Senate. Now, there are some ins and outs about that. People think that if they don't fund the DHS bill, all of a sudden ICE is just going to be poof, gone from Minneapolis or melted. We are melting ice. Congress isn't doing shit, but they're starting to talk about it. I'm going to read to you from something Dan Pfeiffer, who worked on the Obama administration, what he wrote this week, because he does know about these rules. And I think it's important to know some of this because a lot of us are getting very disappointed with our Democratic leadership in Congress. I'm not disappointed with Kelly Morrison, my congressional representative. She has been kicking ass. She's been doing a great job being very outspoken. She voted against funding DHS last week. There were 7 Democrats who voted for it. Now, I'm going to write read to you from what Dan Pfeiffer wrote. There has been a debate playing out somewhat under the radar about how Democrats should handle the DHS vote. Many Democrats have argued that they should use this moment to demand guardrails on ICE's conduct, including a ban on masks and requirements for judicial warrants. This is a much more complicated situation, and that's why we're talking about this. Now, here are some points. The bill that funds ICE and DHS passed the House on Thursday, with 7 Democrats voting yes. Very disappointing. If Congress fails to pass a bill, the Department of Homeland Security will shut down. The rest of the government will not shut down. Congress has either passed or is on the cusp of passing bills to fund other agencies other than DHS. Another point, funding bills are subject to the filibuster. So to pass this bill, Republicans will need at least 7 Democrats in the Senate to vote with them. And Chuck Schumer is assuring us that's not going to happen. So therefore, it passed in the House already because Hakeem Jeffries couldn't keep his caucus together. It still has to pass the Senate, and Chuck Schumer is saying it's not going to pass in the Senate. Another point, blocking funding will not stop ICE from doing what it is doing in Minnesota and elsewhere. The president decides which government functions are essential and can continue during an agency shutdown. So even if DHS shuts down, Trump could say, I still want ICE to go in there. I want him to go in there. I want him to execute. I want him to shoot those Minnesotans like dogs. Because that's what he does want. The president decides which government functions are essential. During the government shutdown in 2025, ICE continued to terrorize communities. And they are a domestic terrorist organization, as is the whole Trump administration. Another thing, importantly, most of ICE's funding is mandatory funding from the big, beautiful, stupid bill that they passed last year. Additionally, one lesson of the last shutdown is that Republicans will not cave. If they wouldn't cave on the Obamacare tax credits, which were supported by a majority of hardcore MAGA voters, it's hard to see them agreeing to meaningful guardrails for ICE. I know this is incredibly unsatisfying, but I want everyone to understand what Democrats can and can't do and what blocking the bill would actually mean. Now, he goes on to say why Democrats still must block the bill, even though blocking the bill won't really change much on the ground for what we're seeing. Masked, unidentified members of a paramilitary force loyal to the President of the United States have invaded and occupied an American city. All right? Even if that was in a sci-fi movie or a catastrophe movie from 10 years ago, everyone would say, well, that would never happen. I think people would say that is impossible to happen. Yet it has happened. I'm going to repeat it. Masked, unidentified members of a paramilitary force loyal to the President of the United States have invaded and occupied an American city. The president's flunkies in the Department of Justice are investigating the victims, not the shooters. They are also trying to prosecute local officials like Minneapolis mayor and the governor of the state for a crime of trying to protect their citizens from this paramilitary force. They have killed multiple people, and their violence and aggression are ramping up, not down. I understand all the arguments against picking this fight. Now, this is Dan Pfeiffer talking. I know affordability and the economy are better issues than immigration and ICE. I know Trump, Stephen Miller, and J.D. Vance are licking their chops over this fight. I know how the right-wing media will portray Democrats as being on the side of criminals and drug traffickers, and I know Democrats are on a trajectory to win the House, and there are real downsides to picking a risky fight that may result in losing politically, and will almost certainly lose substantively. Now, I don't agree with that paragraph, really. But then he says, I don't care. So this is Dan Pfeiffer kind of going with old school politics, which we need to, we're done. That's done. And even Dan Pfeiffer is saying, I know politically this is a bad idea. I don't care. Standing up and using every iota of your limited power is not just the right thing to do, it's the righteous thing to do. I really don't understand how someone can see what's happening in Minnesota and around the country and do anything else. Someone has to step up and say enough is enough, to draw attention to what is happening in Minnesota and try to stop it. I really don't see any other option. That's Dan Pfeiffer saying that. So that's what's going on. So keep in mind that the Democrats can only do what they can do, and it may not change much as far as what we can see, but they've got to do it anyway. All right, now I'm going to kind of change subjects here because it was still less than a week ago that Trump made an absolute fool of himself at Davos and other places. It was unbelievable. The speech he did, I think it was on Monday at Davos, it was incredible. Absolutely unbelievable. It was just really low energy, and we need Iceland. He kept calling it Iceland instead of Greenland. We need Iceland. And even if they say we can't have it, we're going to take it. We're going to have it. We're going to have it. But what he was saying also, the content of what he was saying was just, first of all, stupid. He is such a fucking idiot. And it's so plain to see. And it's plain to see that all of the leaders in the world know that he's a stupid fucking idiot. And he lost all of them. Now, a very important speech was made by Mark Carney of Canada. And what was his speech saying? The same thing Kamala Harris has been saying now for months. The system is broken and it needs to be changed. We need to go outside of we need to throw away what we have and start again. He's talking about on the world stage. He's talking about the way NATO's been working for the last 70, 80 years is not working anymore. The system is broken, and we need to do something completely different. That's why you don't hear me talking about the midterms. I don't know what our government is going to be like by November of this year, because what we have now is not sustainable. So it has to change. And we can't wait for the midterms that Trump might prevent from even happening. We can't wait for that. Everyone's saying, oh, everything's going to change after next November. No, we can't wait for next November. And that's why I'm glad that the Democrats are starting to see this, right down to Dan Pfeiffer, who these people who are stuck in the politics of the past, the people who are experts on politics, no, you're useless now. Anyway, Mark Carney made what I heard a historian say was the most important speech of the last decade by saying this. And he's basically saying we can't count on the United States anymore because they're ran by an idiot. And by the way, when Dan Pfeiffer was talking about that Republicans are still going to call Democrats, anti-crime or whatever, trying to protect criminals and all that, even Fox News is going against it. And like I told you, NRA, the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus. So I don't know. MAGA is changing sides. Okay, I said I wasn't going to talk about that anymore, but another thing that happened was a press conference. I think it was on Tuesday, maybe Wednesday even, not long ago. Here on KARE 11, it's a local TV station. There was a presser with the Brooklyn Park police chief, and he was talking about that his officers who are not on duty, only the ones that have different colored skin other than white or Caucasian are being pulled over by ICE and Border Patrol. And by the way, Minnesota, why is Border Patrol here? You fucks, get the fuck out. Anyway, I channeled last week's Todd there for a moment. So that's a pretty incredible thing as well. that was something I was going to be reporting on. Another thing I was going to be reporting on was there was a letter brief sent to the court to appoint a special master that was sent by Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie, a special master to oversee DHS releasing, or not DHS, but Pam Bondi releasing the Epstein files. The judge said, well, I don't know that you guys have the right standing. It's not like you're a victim or a survivor. Hint, hint. So then, Haley Robson and Lisa Phillips both sent letters to both judges, Berman and Engelmeyer. So progress is being made still. The survivors are coming out. There is more information about more survivors coming out. I gave a big report on that last week, talking about the recordings I listened to that were so heinous that I won't even tell you what they're called or where to find them, because most people don't want that kind of stuff in their head. And I can see why after putting it in my head. That's not going away. Trump and Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller, they are celebrating the brutal death of Alex Preddy because that's all people are talking about this weekend. But we're not taking our eye off the ball. They are trying to cover up for the Epstein files. That's why all of this is happening. Don't forget that. And the reason they don't want the Epstein files coming out is because it's way worse. It's not about Trump protecting his pride or trying not to go to prison. Trump has a responsibility to protect all of these horrible creatures who are multi-billionaires all over the world. He is their mob boss. There are a few more things that I want to say. I want to play for you this clip because I just think it's so marvelous. I just love it so much. A lifelong Greenlander, Tilly Martinusson, I think is how you say her name, Martinussen. Tilly Martinusson. She is a politician in Greenland. And here's what she's had to say about Trump talking about taking Greenland. By the way, he's completely backed down after a meeting with Mark Rutte, the head of NATO. What did Mark Rutte say to him? We know this and this about you, so forget about Greenland? Because Trump completely caved. But before he caved, this is what Tilly Martinusson had to say to Trump.
We don't really value cash and Kardashian lips and fake boobs and stuff like that very highly. Actually, you cannot even own land in Greenland. You can get an allotment for your house and then you own the house on top of the land. But Greenlanders don't believe in the land is for one person, is for everyone. And so is the seas, like the riches that we have there. So it's a big miscalculation that he thinks that Greenlanders would be incited by cash or something like that. We're not. And even if you were to say like $100,000 per person or something like that, we wouldn't give up free healthcare. We wouldn't give up free education. We wouldn't give up being a part of Europe. We wouldn't give up on our sovereignty eventually.
I just love that. It makes me want to be a Greenlander. Of course, I don't think they should welcome me. I'm an old white guy from the United States at this point. I'm the enemy, right? But I'm not. But it made me think, I want to go to Greenland. I want to live in Greenland. Things are, we've already run out of time, but I do need to give you still, I know it goes on, and it's because Putin keeps pulling, a rabbit out of a hat over and over, but he's really running out of rabbits at this point. Mark Rutte, who I just mentioned, he talked about the Ukrainian war this week, and he was talking about that Russia is in a non-sustainable place. They're losing more people than they're gaining as far as soldiers are concerned. 25,000 deaths a month. That's not casualties. That's not deaths plus captured plus injured. That's just deaths of just the Russians in this war. Putin is just throwing them like cannon fodder at the front lines. They never retreat. They die. So, to give you an idea, you remember going back in time, Russia fought in Afghanistan for 9 years in the 1980s. And they were losing 138 people a month, and that was too many. Now they're losing 25,000 a month. They lost 15,000 total in 9 years in their war with Afghanistan. And now, every month, at least for the last 6 months, they have lost at least 25,000 each month. That alone, plus there's been security breaches, and I'm looking at some of the headlines, again, from Jason J. Smart. It's pretty incredible. Kremlin knows it's defeated. Putin's war cash grab. Russia orders evacuations inside Russia. Kremlin security on the brink. Russia cannibalizes air fleets. They're dusting off old airplanes that haven't flown forever. Ukraine is making a lot of headway, and Russia is losing a lot of ground, and it's really escalating. That pattern is getting much more stark. I won't take the time to go through these headlines of Anna from Ukraine and Jason J. Smart and the military show, but it's pretty overwhelming. If you go look at those sources on YouTube, you can inform yourself as to just how stark the difference is coming more and more each week now, day by day, actually, looking for an end where Ukraine wins that war and Russia and Putin collapse. Putin is collapsing. So is Trump. Either his mortality is going to end him soon or something else, because this is unsustainable. The people are rising up. We need 3.5% of the people to rise up to overtake a dictator. Well, we're there. The people are here. We're doing our part. Congress seems to be waking up a little bit. Things are getting interesting. As you can tell, I'm in a better mood than I was last week, even though the news is horrific, especially here in Minneapolis. Watching yesterday, it looked like a war zone. There was just heartbreaking footage going on all day long and into the night. So keep your head up, though, because all of these things are empowering us, and they're weakening the darkness that is the Trump regime. Let's take care of each other. We keep us safe, like the sign here says. We keep us safe. That's what we're doing. Thank you for doing it along with me. I will be here reporting on the things that you're probably not hearing about throughout the week. Every week here on A Satellite View. Thank you so much for being here with me. You are so important to me. I can't tell you. I love each and every one of you for joining me here. And I hope that I'm helping you get through some of this. I know you're helping me get through it just because you exist and give me a reason to try and have some sort of purpose. I don't know. Why am I doing this? I don't know. I always talk too much here at the end when I'm trying to say goodbye. I'll tell another joke I made up because we've got to keep the humor going, right? This is a joke I made up, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or 8 to 10 years ago. And I didn't tell it for a long time because Barron Trump was underage. Now he's an adult, so I can freely tell the joke, even though it's not really a joke about him. So here it is, okay? Again, too much of an introduction. Why did Melania and Donald Trump name their only son Barron? Because they wanted to name him after their souls. Is it funny? I don't know. Trying to keep the humor going. Probably failing, I understand. But hey, what am I supposed to do? Anyway, again, thank you for being here. I will speak at you next week.
You've been listening to A Satellite View with Todd Mikkelson. Go to toddmikkelson.com for links and more information.